Channel open. Welcome back to WeeklyTrek, a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions podcast network. I am your host, Alex Perry.
What's today's date? The date.
Today's show was recorded on September 5th, 2020, and is current through the Star Trek Lower Decks episode Cupid's Errant Arrow, so beware of spoilers. Though, given Lower Decks is only available in North America right now, as I have been for the last few weeks, I will be noting in the episode description the time codes for any Lower Decks discussion, so you can skip over it if you choose, though we actually don't have any Lower Decks stories this week, so we may not get to discuss it at all. All right, let's get into the show.
Good day, Voyager, and welcome to A Briefing with Neelix. It's a catchy title, isn't it?
WeeklyTrek is a 30-minute news show covering the biggest stories from the Star Trek franchise. We are in a new golden age of Star Trek. There are 6 television shows in production, possibly more on the way, and enough merchandise to fill the Bajoran wormhole. So stick with me, and I'll help you sort the real facts from lots of the Dominion propaganda that you'll find online. But I can't do this alone, and my guest this week is Trekkie Rob himself. It's Rob Chapman. Rob, welcome to WeeklyTrek.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
All right, Rob, well, I ask my guests this question every week. I want to know something that's got you feeling good about Star Trek at the moment. What's got you moving at Warp 10?
So the thing I've picked that's got me feeling good about Star Trek is I've recently, literally a few days ago, finished reading the Star Trek novel. It's quite an old one. It's Cast No Shadow by James Swallow.
Yes, right. Valeris.
Yes, that's the one. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a really good read. So yeah, it's not surprising that I enjoyed it because The Undiscovered Country is my favourite Star Trek film. And this novel kind of fills in the gaps. It takes place 7 years after the events of The Undiscovered Country, and it centres around Valeris and what happens to her before the film, during the film, after the film. It was a really good novel, so I really enjoyed that. So I definitely recommend it, especially if you're a fan of The Undiscovered Country. So that's the thing that's got me feeling good.
I am a massive fan of James Swallow's Star Trek novel. I will admit, this one I read many years ago, and I remember it was about Valeris, and that's probably about it at this point. But the one he wrote that really sticks with me the most, and I think is probably the most fabulous book he's written in the Star Trek universe so far, was the first book in the Terok Nor trilogy, which was about the story of the start of the Cardassian occupation on Bajor. It's just a really, really terrific story if you haven't read it.
I haven't read that one. I've heard of it, but yeah, like you, I'm a big fan of James Swallow's work. I've met him a few times at Destination Star Trek, and he's a great guy, and he's a really talented author. All his books are always enjoyable. So yeah.
Yeah, he's done a couple of Titan novels. He's done a Discovery novel, Fear Itself, the Saru book that they did. I think it was the 3rd book that came out. It's been a little while. Last one that he did, though, it's been a little while since he published one. I hope that he will be writing one soon. I think I'd really like to see him do a Picard novel.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'd definitely be up for that.
Well, the thing I am feeling good about this week, and it's actually one of our news stories, but I wanted to acknowledge it up front, is the fact that Tuesday is Star Trek Day, the 54th anniversary of the Star Trek franchise. And we'll talk about this when we get into the news stories, but CBS is really pushing the boat out for Star Trek Day this year. The first time they really have sort of programmed around the day of the anniversary itself. And I'm feeling really good about that because, I think we have been critical of CBS in the past, perhaps quite rightly in my opinion, that they have not kind of taken opportunities to celebrate the franchise where available in the way that other major franchises do. I'm thinking about Star Wars and May the 4th as an example. And so to see CBS finally kind of pull their socks up and sort of figure out a very fun celebration of the birthday of Star Trek is a really exciting one. And I first covered on this show, it was nearly a year and a half ago, the reorganization of CBS that created the sort of global franchise group for Star Trek. And we hope that, with the addition of new voices and new experienced people around brands and how to take advantage of exploring and celebrating and expanding the IP of the Star Trek franchise, seems like it is finally maybe starting to pay off. So that's got me feeling really good about Star Trek this week, but obviously it's something that we will talk about in much more detail once we get into the news stories. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I cannot wait for Tuesday can't come. It is Tuesday, isn't it? Can't come quick enough. I'm really looking forward to it. It's a packed schedule. It looks really good, and it's nice that because a lot of the conventions aren't taking place. It's kind of like a little mini convention with lots of panels. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
All right. Well, with that, let's turn to the week's top stories.
There's a war going on, and I'm a reporter.
Black alert. Star Trek Discovery Season 3 is now less than 6 weeks away. And as we approach the third season premiere, we are learning more about what to expect from the upcoming season. This week, CBS announced that the Star Trek franchise's first non-binary and transgender actors would be taking roles in Discovery, marking a big step forward for the diversity and representation of the Star Trek universe. Spotted briefly in the Season 3 trailer released at New York Comic-Con last October, floating in the symbiont pools of Trill, Lou DeBarrio, who identifies as non-binary, will be playing Adira, a character who is, quote, highly intelligent with a confidence and self-assurance well beyond their years. Cough, cough, Dax, question mark, cough, cough. The role of Adira is DeBarrio's television acting debut, and like the actor, Adira also identifies as non-binary. DeBarrio spoke a little about the character of Adira in an interview with GLAAD magazine. They said, when we meet Adira, they're suffering from memory loss. They remember nothing from their past and very little about themselves. They know they're non-binary, of course, but coming on to Discovery, they're cautious about sharing that information with anyone. They're a private person, so they aren't going to divulge a lot about themselves to a ship full of strangers. Not until Adira has found a place of comfort with Stamets and Culber that they feel they can talk about who they are. In addition to DeBarrio, Ian Alexander, who is transgender, will be appearing in Discovery Season 3 in the role of Gray. Gray is described as being empathetic, warm, and eager to fulfill his lifelong dream of being a Trill host. We don't yet know how many episodes either actor will feature in the upcoming season of Discovery, but the strong Trill tie-in presents a lot of exciting possibilities for what's to come. Rob, we knew we were getting appearances by the Trill in this season's Discovery, thanks to the first trailer. But how does it feel to get a little more info? And what do you think about the additions of Blue DeBarrio and Ian Alexander to the Discovery cast?
I think it's absolutely fantastic news that the Discovery and Star Trek are continuing to give a visibility to underrepresented communities, in this case, such as those that identify as non-binary, transgender. So I think that's brilliant. Continuing this tradition of IDIC, and it's really important for these communities to see people like them on television. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. These characters sound fascinating. I like I think Adira is this character that is going to form a bond with Stamets and Culber. That sounds really interesting. And there's talk about memory loss, which I thought was quite interesting as well. And I know, you mentioned that there's images of Adira floating in a symbiont pool. So, and that mixed with the memory loss made me think of, Dax in DS9 and the whole Duran thing where they wipe part of her memory to stop her. So I wonder if there's something going on similar to that, whether the Trill are actually caused that memory loss maybe. So it'd be really exciting to find out what's happening there. And is it Gray, the other character? Sounds equally as fascinating. And that made me, because it's to talk about them wanting to be a Trill host. And that immediately made me think of, again, I can't remember the name of the episode, but where there's a Trill initiate that Jadzia trains, made me think of that. So it'd be really interesting to see their journey into, becoming a Trill host. And there was talk about this unexpected turn that's going to happen to Gray. So, what's happening there? What's that going to be about? So I cannot wait to see these two new characters and learn about them. Yeah, really, really, really exciting.
Yeah, the producers said way back, it probably was last year sometime, that where Discovery Season 2 had sort of drawn upon, a lot of original series ideas, that Discovery Season 3 was maybe going to lean a bit more into some Deep Space Nine. And, the Trill, obviously, I think we now know are a big part of that. Adira Dax certainly has a very nice ring to it. Now, we obviously don't know that the character is a Dax, and actually, though we see the character floating in a symbiont pool of the two pictures we've gotten so far, it's actually really tough to see whether the character has sort of Trill spots. So, we could be way off base about whether one of these characters is a Dax or not. But I think we, talked about this with previous guests on a previous episode, would be a really nice way of sort of tying together the Discovery being so far into the future, having a character who has that lineage of memory that goes all the way back to the past. I mean, if it's Adira, it does sound like there is a memory loss component to it, but presumably at some point that, could potentially be addressed. But overall, I mean, this is just very exciting for Star Trek as a whole. I think the headline that was issued on the press release when this was first announced got people sort of a little wrapped around an axle. Yes, there have been non-binary character allegories and transgender character allegories in Star Trek before. We'll take that as read. But the idea that you have a non-binary actor and a transgender actor playing both a non-binary character and a transgender character is, of course, a franchise first. It's a franchise first to have a non-binary actor and a transgender actor in the franchise. And so I have to admit, it's been very frustrating online to see all of the people poo-pooing the announcement by saying, well, what about the Outcast? And what about Jadzia? And even going so far as to suggest that Odo himself is non-binary when, I suppose in a classically biological sense, given that he is a puddle of goo, you could say he lacks a gender. But Rene Aubergenois certainly played him as presenting male and never, as anything other than that. So, I think this really is big for the franchise. It's big for representation. It's big for fans who themselves are non-binary and transgender, who don't see themselves represented in the Janai and in Jadzia and in Odo to the extent that they will in Adira and Gray. So this is just extremely exciting all around, I think.
Absolutely. Like you say, it's not just about the characters, it's also about the actors as well. So yeah, it's really, really great news.
Well, Star Trek Discovery's third season will not only be welcoming new faces to the show, but will also welcome back a beloved familiar face, though without the signature makeup we have become accustomed to him wearing. After roles as Cole in season 1, Cole Shah and Tanavik in season 2, fan favorite Kenneth Mitchell confirmed in an interview in the most recent issue of the Star Trek magazine, which has just hit people's mailboxes this week, that he would be returning to the show for Discovery's third season. We don't know much about the role that Mitchell will be playing, but we do know that he won't be appearing as a Klingon. I'm playing a human character, Mitchell said in the interview with Star Trek Magazine's Ian Spelling. It's beautiful, and I'm excited for the fans to meet him. Mitchell's appearance in the third season of Discovery is all the more notable because the actor revealed earlier this year that he was diagnosed in 2018 with ALS, a degenerative disease of the motor neuron. The outpouring of love from Star Trek fans, particularly on the Star Trek cruise earlier this year, which Mitchell joined shortly after he revealed his battle with ALS, has actually been quite incredible. And it's very exciting that we'll get to see Mitchell back alongside his Discovery castmates, because I think many thought that after he had announced his diagnosis, that was perhaps the last we were going to see of Kenneth Mitchell in Star Trek Discovery. Rob, are you excited to see Kenneth Mitchell back for Discovery's third season? And how do you feel about him sort of having taken on the Jeffrey Combs-esque like sort of quality of the Discovery cast?
It's absolutely awesome news. Kenneth Mitchell is brilliant in Discovery. He brings such, very similar to Mary Chieffo, he brings such energy and passion and enthusiasm to the roles that he plays. So it's him coming back to do anything is awesome. And it's really good that he'll be getting a chance to play a human. So it instantly made me think of how excited I was to see it when I first saw DS9's Far Beyond the Stars, seeing characters that are usually in heavy prosthetic makeup, like, Armin Shimmerman, Michael Dorn, and etc. When they were playing, they had their makeup off. It was great to see them. So it'd be equally great to see Kenneth Mitchell without all his prosthetic makeup. But yeah, I'm really excited to see him back. Yeah, as I said, he's a fantastic actor. And like you said, it's brilliant that he's... Because, it's such sad news when it was revealed about his diagnosis. So it's great that hasn't stopped him, and he's still able to do this and to come back on Discovery with his fellow cast members. And I'm just in awe of how he's handled this life-changing diagnosis. He's such an amazing human being. So yeah, absolutely thrilled that he's coming back for season 3 of Discovery.
Yeah, I mean, he only announced his diagnosis in January of this year, but he got the diagnosis in 2018, which means that he filmed both of his Star Trek Discovery season 2 roles, knowing that he had ALS. He's also had a recurring role on the CW's Nancy Drew mysteries, which he has sort of kept up as his condition has progressed. And now, fabulously will be returning to season 3 of Star Trek Discovery. He is just a fabulous actor who just radiates gravitas and has just been fabulous in every role that he's done in this show. And so to get the opportunity to see him back, and sounds like in potentially more than one episode, including an episode directed by Jonathan Frakes, is just going to be really, really exciting. And yet one more thing for us to look forward to about Star Trek Discovery season 3 when it premieres now in just 5.5 weeks.
Very exciting.
Well, buckle up, Star Trek fans. As we were talking earlier in the show, September the 8th, the day after this episode will drop into your podcast feeds, is the 54th anniversary of the US premiere of Star Trek. On that day in 1966, The Man Trap aired in the US for the first time, and CBS is pushing out the boat this year to celebrate the franchise's anniversary. CBS have announced that September 8th will be Star Trek Day and have revealed a packed schedule of live panels covering all the shows of the franchise that will be available to fans worldwide. Beginning at 3 p.m. Eastern, that's 8 p.m. UK time for you, Rob, CBS will broadcast 3.5 hours of panels hosted by Will Wheaton and LeVar Burton's daughter, Micah Burton, which will touch on most of the current shows of the franchise. In 30-minute installments, panels will cover Star Trek Discovery, Deep Space Nine, Strange New Worlds, the original series, Voyager, Enterprise, Lower Decks, Picard, and The Next Generation. Notably, almost the entire cast of Star Trek Enterprise will be appearing in their panel, including Captain Archer himself, actor Scott Bakula, as well as the main foursome of ensigns from Star Trek Lower Decks in their panel. In addition, the creative team for Star Trek Strange New Worlds, that's executive producers Akiva Goldsman and Henry Alonzo Myers, and co-executive producers Akila Cooper and Davey Perez, will be appearing alongside series stars Anson Mount, Ethan Peck, and Rebecca Romaine, which will be the first time we have heard from the full creative team behind the next live-action Star Trek. All the panels can be viewed for fans worldwide by heading to StarTrek.com/day. Supplementing the 3.5 hours of panels in the US, fans with access to CBS All Access can enjoy 24 hours of curated Star Trek episodes as part of a marathon covering all the series starting at 3 a.m. Eastern on September the 8th. And if that wasn't enough, CBS are reviving their charity fundraising drive and will donate $1 to racial justice organizations for all tweets that use the hashtag Star Trek United Gives on Tuesday. And StarTrek.com's official store will be running a series of flash sales throughout the day to encourage you to part with your hard-earned latinum on some Star Trek merch. Well, wow, I mean, what an exciting day filled with events from which we will hopefully get some news and announcements about our beloved franchise. Rob, what do you think you are most looking forward to on Star Trek Day?
Well, that's a hard one to answer. There's so much going on. It's an absolutely packed schedule of panels. I mean, I'm a big Voyager fan, so I'm really looking forward to that. We've got most of the cast on their panel, so I'm really looking forward to the Voyager panel. Also, the fact that I don't think Scott Bakula, we don't get to see him very much at conventions and panels, so it'd be great to see him, and again, the majority of the Enterprise cast. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. Looking forward to hearing about Strange New Worlds and hopefully getting either some sneak peeks or learning some new things about that show. Yeah, and possibly learning a bit more about season 3 of Discovery. It's a bit of a shame that I think they're doing an episode marathon throughout the day as well. It's a bit of a shame that that's a US thing and not an international thing, but I totally understand it's a CBS All Access thing. And, international fans can just have their own little marathon on wherever they get their Star Trek from. So that doesn't really matter. I will definitely be partying with my hard-earned latinum and buying some merchandise for sure. So I'll be looking forward to to doing a bit of shopping. But it sounds awesome. Sounds really, really awesome. I can't wait.
Yes, I will confess to having already purchased myself a Star Trek Day t-shirt. I was quite tickled by the fact that they had produced a line of those t-shirts and mugs and stickers for Star Trek Day itself, because I think I want to wear that on September the 8th every year from here on out until the t-shirt falls apart or I die, whichever comes soonest. But yeah, I mean, this is really exciting. I mean, you know, as I said at the top, CBS have, I think, whiffed multiple times on opportunities to kind of put together big packages of things to celebrate the franchise. And it does sound like there may be, you know, at the very least, a number of merchandise announcements that will take place on September the 8th. Fansets tweeted about a week ago that they were holding their September pin announcements until the 8th to coincide with Star Trek Day. So I suppose it's also possible that there are other licensees who potentially will make some announcements that day as well. I, for example, would love to know, and I know you as a big book fan as well, I'd love to know what, you know, the next upcoming Star Trek books are. Maybe that's something we can get an announcement for on Star Trek Day. And then maybe even, you know, as you say, some announcements about these shows, or maybe even some announcements about some old favorite shows and, you know, things that might happen in the future. But before I walk too far down the path of speculating on it, I will admit up front that my theory this week is a range of options for what we could learn on Tuesday about what's next for Star Trek. So I will just preview that coming up within the next 10 minutes. But yeah, I mean, just super, super, super exciting. So I assume, Rob, you'll be sitting down at 8 o'clock to begin the 3.5-hour run of watching all these panels back to back, right?
Absolutely. I've got it put on alerts and alarms on multiple devices, just in case by some freak occurrence I forget. So I will definitely be tuning in and watching that. And I'm also quite looking forward to, they're doing this, you know, what Star Trek means to me with the hashtag, is it Star Trek story? It'd be really nice. I know, you know, we hear all the time about why Star Trek is so important to people, but it'd be nice that that'll be hopefully featured on across the social media channels, the Star Trek social media channels. So that's a nice little touch. So yeah, I'll definitely be tuning in, definitely be watching along. Can't wait.
And lastly this week, if you're looking for a Star Trek-themed tipple to toast all the exciting news we just discussed, Wines That Rock have announced 2 new Star Trek wines are joining their collection. Following the success of Chateau Picard and the Federation Special Reserve wines that were released last year, recall the first run of Chateau Picard that they produced sold out in less than 24 hours. Wines That Rock are adding a white wine version of the Federation Special Reserve, and this is quite an exciting one, a take on the Klingon blood wine. The new Federation Special Reserve White, which is a companion to last year's Old Vine Zinfandel, which is a red wine, is a Sauvignon Blanc. But the Klingon blood wine is a Cabernet Sauvignon that is presented in a stocky bottle with a hand-dipped wax seal and is adorned with Klingon writing and iconography that was developed for the bottle in partnership between Wines That Rock and the Klingon Language Institute. The Federation Reserve White is now on sale for $40 a bottle, while the Klingon blood wine can be added to your wine cabinet for $50 a bottle. Unfortunately, due to quite ridiculously restrictive US liquor licensing laws, these wines are only available in the United States, and actually, even within the United States, you can only get them in 43 of the nation's 50 states at this time. But if you have any ability to get your hands on one of these wines and you enjoy the occasional glass of either red or white, I actually would encourage you to do so. The first 2 releases were really great. I had a couple of bottles of the Chateau Picard and a couple of bottles of the Federation Reserve. Still have one left to sort of keep forever, but the ones I bought for drinking are pretty much now gone. So it's exciting to see the company branch out into other Star Trek-themed wines and to find that the Chateau Picard and the first Federation Reserve are not just a one-off, that there is more coming from Wines That Rock. So here's hoping Cardassian Canard and Bajoran Spring Wine are on their way next. When I interviewed Wines That Rock for trekcore.com at STLB a year ago, they had mentioned the possibility of doing blood wine and also talked about those other two as ideas that they were considering. There's sort of lots of kind of fun stuff from the Star Trek universe in the kind of wine space that they can explore and give us their version of. So, Rob, unless you've got a secret hookup in the US, I assume you probably won't get a chance to try these new releases, but it's pretty exciting, and it's always great to get new merchandise for the franchise. And I am much less of a drinker than I used to be. I only really drink very occasionally at this point. But I have to say that one of the things that has really kind of drawn me to these releases is the art on these bottles is just really nice. I mean, they you know, whether you are a drinker or not, it does seem like, wouldn't you agree that these sort of make great collector's pieces?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not a big wine drinker, really. And that's a testament to how awesome these bottles look, because I would consider buying them. And I don't really drink wine that much. The designs of the bottles themselves are really cool. I like the labels on the Federation one, the white wine, the kind of TNG style Delta inspired labels, really cool. And the Klingon blood wine with the deep red Klingon insignia, and I think there's Klingon lettering on it. So yeah, it would just be cool just to have as a collectible piece. So if I could get my hands on it, I probably would. And like you said, if they're releasing more in the future, it'd be interesting to see how what they're going to do for, if they have Kanar, what they're going to use for that, and how they're going to make that. That's really good. It would have been cool to see, in DS9, the blood wine is usually in like these little metal bottles.
Yeah.
But I guess there's probably a reason they can't do that. But that would have been cool to see something like that. But yeah.
Yeah. So I asked them about that a year ago when they said they were planning to do the blood wine, and they had put just a massive amount of thought and effort into how to make these products as authentic as possible. The Klingon blood wine that appeared in Deep Space Nine, those bottles were actually motor oil cans that had been repainted and used as props. And because there's all these rules and laws about how wine has to be presented, it has to be in a glass bottle. So that was not an option for them. But like for the Cardassian Kanar, for example, they told me about how the bottles that were used in the show were only made by two factories in like Italy and Spain, and the last one had come off the line in the 70s. But they had an original, and they were looking at whether they could kind of recreate it and get a factory to kind of make this bottle again, because it's not been made in over 50 years. So the way they explained it to me was their approach to these wines was not just kind of put wine in a bottle and stick a Star Trek label on it and try and hawk it, but that, to try and make it as good and authentic and as evocative of whatever the kind of Star Trek idea it was trying to present could be. And, I think so far they've really succeeded. I mean, certainly with the Chateau Picard, it's actual Chateau Picard in a bottle that's identical to the bottles that we used on the show. But the additional releases too have also been great. And so I'm really looking forward and crossing my fingers for more.
Yeah, you can, like you say, you can really see that they aren't just slapping the word Star Trek on it. This is something that they've clearly thought about, and the design and the colours and the labels. It's very authentic. So yeah, hats off to them.
Absolutely. All right, we've talked about the facts, and now let's speculate on what's going to happen in the future of Star Trek.
You make some very good points, Captain. But it's still all speculation and theory.
So each week, I and my guest give you a wish or theory we're nurturing about Lower Decks, Discovery, Picard, any of the shows, future of the franchise. So Rob, let's hear your theory or wish for this week.
Well, we've talked a bit about books, and I'm going to stick with that theme. So my wish is that either soon or at some point in the future, we get some new Star Trek novels that perhaps feature some of the more, supporting secondary characters that we've seen in newer Star Trek. So, for example, some of the bridge crew characters from Discovery, like Detmer, Awasakan, Reese, even Narn, or even some of the secondary characters in Picard, like Laris and Jaban. And I know they've been featured in some of the comics. Not I've read them, but so I hear. Or even focusing on characters, some of the Enterprise characters that we see in Discovery, like Lieutenant Armin and Cadet Sidhu. I think it would be really cool to have some novels that feature on some of those more secondary supporting characters, or even maybe explore them more in some short treks. That would be kind of cool. Yeah, because I feel like we haven't got to spend as much time with those characters or has gotten to know them as well as perhaps other secondary characters or supporting characters on other Star Trek shows. So it'd be really cool to see them in a novel or in some short treks. That's my wish.
Yeah, I would love that. I mean, it's definitely, first kind of season and a half of Discovery felt like they sort of took the approach that, look, we have these kind of sort of core sort of 5 or 6 characters, and we have this sort of cast of other characters who are going to appear on a weekly basis, but like we're not super interested in kind of exploring those characters a lot deeper. I think that kind of changed when Michelle Paradise became the showrunner in mid-season 2, because then you sort of immediately out of the gate got Project Daedalus and the episode that gave us the backstory on Arium, and then kind of for the remaining couple of episodes of the season, you did get sort of more of an opportunity for characters like Detmer and Linus and a few of the other bridge crew to sort of Woshakun to breathe and to have some character moments of their own. But yeah, I think, the book so far have sort of been used as a way of expanding out for these characters, giving us more of a story, right? We got that for Tilly with the story of her childhood, and Saru with his experiences on the Shenzhou before Discovery starts, with Burnham and, Georgiou's first meeting with Lorca, Prime Lorca, and the most recent book, sort of filling in the gaps for Mira Georgiou between the end of season 1 and when we find her as part of Section 31 in season 2. And it would be great to have, a Detmer book or an Arian book or something that kind of that actually would really add to these characters and help us appreciate them more. So yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I think that's awesome. Let's say they were going to do 3 short treks or 3 books on any of these characters, whether Discovery or Picard or anyone else. Who do you think you'd want it to be?
Well, that's a hard one. I mean, the ideal would be, I don't know if you've ever read the Voyager novel Pathways.
Yes.
So something like that. So it's kind of like a mini exploration of all of them. But if I had to pick 3, I'd quite like to see more, if we don't see her in Strange New Worlds, more of Cadet Sidhu. She was really interesting. And I know, sadly, she isn't with us anymore, but I'd like to see Arium's character maybe, and maybe even Nam. But to be honest, you could pick any of them and I would be happy.
I love that idea of doing a Pathways style book for these characters where you could basically do like a compilation of short stories that really add to those characters and introduce you to, a lot of them all at once. I think that's a great idea. I love that.
Yeah, it'd be nice to kind of see how, all the Discovery Bridge crew, how did they get to be on Discovery? I know we know bits already, but how did they get to be there? What happened to them previously? That would be really cool.
So my theory this week is I'm going to pull us back to this discussion of Star Trek Day, and I'm going to preface this by saying, we went into the San Diego Comic-Con virtual panels kind of really hyped up and excited about the possibility of what kind of San Diego Comic-Con 2019-esque announcements were we going to get? Were they going to tell us new characters who were going to be on Picard? Were they going to, introduce us to whole new shows? And, it ended up being quite disappointing. We got a little bit. We got the name and the title for Star Trek Prodigy, but that was more or less it in terms of news out of San Diego Comic-Con. So I don't want to get people's hopes up too much about Star Trek Day and the kind of announcements that we could get, because it's theoretically possible that we get very little and it's just a fun kind of celebration of the franchise and there isn't really any news that's made. But this is the speculation part of Weekly Trek, so we can go wild, and I have gone wild in the past, and so I'm going to present a series of theories for what we could get at Star Trek Day. And then, Rob, I want to know which, if you could have any of these, which one do you think is most likely, but which one do you want the most? Okay? Here are my theories for what we're going to get at Star Trek Day. 1, a new trailer for Star Trek Discovery Season 3. Been a really long time. It's been 10 months. We know we're only 6 weeks away from the premiere. The next big event is going to be New York Comic-Con. That's only 1 week before the premiere of Discovery. I think if a second trailer for season 3 is going to happen, it's going to happen Tuesday. All right, number 1. Number 2, shoot dates for Picard season 2 and Strange New Worlds season 1. feels kind of like maybe not, because on the maybe not side, obviously COVID-19 pandemic makes it really difficult for them to kind of stick to any sort of thing they come up with. But at the same time, like, what's the kind of thing you could tell people that would get folks excited about these shows starting up, since you don't have a lot to tell them? Kind of let them know when to look forward to production starting up. Okay, so those are my two that I think are like, I think they're possible. Now we move into the more sort of out there ones. So next, an announcement of the motion picture director's edition in 4K, a full remaster of the movie. We know it was talked about as early as San Diego Comic-Con last year, that it was something they wanted to do for the 40th anniversary, and that there were conversations taking place between Paramount and folks who had worked on the director's edition who kept all the original effects. And so it would be not a massive amount of work for them to put the director's edition into 4K. But the 40th anniversary of the motion picture has now passed, but was a really interesting project. Everything takes time. COVID-19, obviously has a big impact on stuff. Maybe that's another project that could kind of see the light of day. Now we get into my sort of crazy ones. For anybody who's a regular listener of this show, you will know from me having talked about it on previous episodes, I am a big fan of the potential of using AI to upscale Deep Space Nine and Voyager. And we're getting panels for Deep Space Nine and Voyager. Wouldn't it be fabulous if there was an announcement that they would be doing some version of HD? Obviously, I would anticipate it would be nothing like the massive undertaking that was TOS and TNG in HD, but with these sort of computer programs that you can use at home to kind of, upscale the episodes yourself. And there are plenty of fans who are doing it. And, the results, particularly for later Voyager and Deep Space Nine seasons, are actually pretty good, sort of show that the potential is there. And then also it's sort of there have been kind of very light rumors about it, but the idea of the original series itself getting another remaster into 4K up from high definition where it is. And maybe, just maybe, here's my most out there one. We've got nearly the full cast of Star Trek Enterprise. Scott Bakula, obviously, he's still working on NCIS New Orleans as the main character. But wouldn't it be fabulous to get some kind of announcement about an Enterprise project in anticipation of next year's 20th anniversary of the premiere of Star Trek Enterprise? So, Rob, those are my ideas. Which ones do you think are going to happen? Which ones are pie in the sky? And which ones do you really want?
I like how your theories get more outlandish as the list goes down. I like that. That's good. Ambitious. Yeah, I think probably realistically, I could definitely see them doing a Discovery Season 3 trailer, another one, because I think they've done 2 trailers. I remember them doing 2 trailers for Season 1, I think.
Yep.
So that's definitely... And 2. So that's definitely doable. And that would be great. That would be great. That would get the hype going for when Season 3 airs. So that would be cool. I mean, the thought of there being an Enterprise, some sort of Enterprise project, or Voyager or DS9 being put into HD or, remastered, that would blow my mind. That would be absolutely brilliant. Yeah, so I think realistically, probably the Discovery Season 3 trailer, but I'm keeping everything crossed for Voyager or DS9 being remastered or put in HD and some sort of Enterprise project. I wondered, when you started talking about Enterprise, I wondered whether you were going to say that T'Pol's, the actress who plays T'Pol, the name's completely gone.
Julian Blaylock.
Yes, whether she might make an appearance. I thought you might say that, but yeah, I mean, all of those options sound awesome, so I'd be happy with any of those.
Well, Rob, let me just say this. I've got faith of the heart that Tuesday's Star Trek Day is going to be a fun day for all concerned, regardless of how much kind of groundbreaking announcements we get. I think it's going to be, even if it just ends up being 30-minute panels of talking about enjoyable moments and things they loved and like how great it is to be affiliated with this franchise, it's still going to be 3.5 hours. That is worth watching. And if one of those things that I named even comes close to being true, even if it's just a Discovery Season 3 trailer, even if it's just, some kind of, maybe it's concept art for Strange New Worlds or something like that, I think it would still be very, very, very fun. And We know there's going to be other stuff coming too, like fan sets, announcements of their September pins. So I think it's regardless of what happens, and I hope I have not hyped it up too much for folks who are listening, but regardless of what happens, I hope a fun time will be had by all.
Definitely. I think I'm going to be happy with whatever. So I'm with you.
Do you have a theory or a wish for Discovery, Picard, Lower Decks, or the future of the franchise that you'd like to share? Tweet them to me at WeeklyTrek, and I might feature your theory in a future episode. Well, that's all the time we've got for this episode of Weekly Trek. Thank you so much to my guest, Rob Chapman, for joining me today. Rob, how can people contact you if they want to continue the conversation?
People can find me on Twitter. I'm at TrekkieRob, and you can also find me at Trek Book Club, which is the Trek Book Club that I run. So yeah, definitely find me there, hit me up, talk about Star Trek.
And what is the book you guys are doing this month?
So this month, we're a bit late because it came out, I think, last month or the month before. We're doing the latest Kelvin novel, so More Beautiful Than Death by David Mack. So I'm looking forward to reading that.
And you can find this show on Twitter at WeeklyTrek and me at Alexander T. Perry. And if you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. And please check out some of the other great shows on the Tricorder Transmissions. And if you like our shows, please also consider becoming a Patreon of Tricorder, which you can find at patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. And lastly, if you're looking for Star Trek news on the internet, I hope you will turn to trekcore.com. Well, thank you, Rob. Thank you to all of my listeners. And until next week, live long and prosper.